What's up, everybody? Welcome back. Greg and Ryan here for My Roanoke Breakdown. We are jumping into chapters 3 and 4 this week.
Now, guys, obviously there are a ton of spoilers in these two breakdowns, so make sure you've seen the episodes, then come right on back and let's check it out. Now, Greg, before we get started what happened, one note, I love, and I know you do too, how every episode starts off like kind of a bumper, the My Roanoke Nightmare, a show within the show. Mm-hmm. It kind of shows like a tease of what happened last week or throughout the season, and gets you caught up what to expect and what to see in the episode that we're gonna watch.
Yeah, it's just like like Paranormal Survivor or any shows just like that. I like it for this show in particular, but I don't like it for other shows in the past. I think sometimes Battlestar Galactica did it too, and you want to like fast forward it so you didn't get teased or spoiled for anything in the episode. But this is awesome. So we left off with Flora. She's gone missing, and the only thing that we have at the moment is her sweater, which is like in the trees way up there. So the cops are called. They head out again, only for the sweater, apparently. They don't know where the hell Flora is at the moment, but they're a little confused too of what's going on here, and they don't buy anything that Lee is selling them.
Yeah, I mean, we have to remember that they've been getting calls from this house, from, the handful of people that are in this house about all these crazy, weird things that are happening. So they're pretty much like, what's going on? Like these newcomers into the neighborhood, they're like just kind of, causing a commotion and just kind of annoying them at this point. But, once they find the sweater in the tree and they bring it down, I was dying laughing at this one part where Lee finally recognizes that it's Flora's sweatshirt after she smells it.
It's Flora's. No, I can't explain it. Seems like you folks have been involved with a lot of that lately.
If you didn't know what kind of sweatshirt Flora had in the first place, I think you might know what your daughter was wearing. But they basically have to it's a huge area, so they have to get volunteers, and everyone has to kind of spread out and have their own little sector of where to.
They're furious.
Yeah, map of where to look at, and of course, this is like the last thing you want to do on your own when everyone's kind of like has to separate and check out this like kind of haunted forest, right? And kind of just look through every crevice and see what's out there. And lo and behold, they do run into some stuff.
So if you ever stumble upon a severed pig head with doll parts all around it, it's time to go, or something bad, really, really bad just happened here. There's nothing you can do at that point. It's over. Had I seen that, I would have thought, oh, bless her heart, Flora's gone. She died. That's it. It's over.
Yeah, that's not a good feeling. You already know that they headed down a kind of a dark path here, and they eventually stumble upon more and more of these things of pig parts mixed in with doll parts, all scattered on the ground. I mean, really good, like a really good horror element, and just completely disgusting. But they stumble upon like this whole farm, right? This whole kind of area that was. It looked like it was kind of abandoned from the outside, and they go inside and they see that like whatever was living here or is currently still living here, it's living in absolute like horrible conditions. So they think that like basically someone got spooked and kind of left the area, right? But Matt, Shelby, and Lee do stumble upon some kids that are just not doing too good.
Yeah, not at all. They're feeding off of the pig out there, like the milk from the pig. It's pretty bad. I get a lot of home vibes here, just looking at this whole scene, how it's playing out. It's creepy.
Now, Greg, these kids aren't your regular kids that you'd find like on a farm, obviously. They basically have been raised here in this one area with God knows who was in charge of this whole group, but they utter the word Croatoan, and then at that point we kind of put it together that the people on this land who have lived here know about like all the horrors and about kind of the rituals that have been going on here. Now to these kids, Matt, Shelby, and Lee are probably monsters, right? They're unfamiliar to them as well, so they're trying to get them away. They're trying to just
they're the beast.
Exactly. They're trying to defend themselves, and by saying Croatoan, they're hoping that they kind of vanish as well. So clearly, these kids have been homeschooled or lack of homeschooled, kind of basically brought up living amongst these pigs and stuff, and whoever was there before. But we don't know for sure who their parents are at all.
Now, back at the house, Lee is with Mason. Mason's furious. He thinks that Lee's just made this whole thing up, as Lee, she's starting to panic herself because she's a cop and she knows after 72 hours, the chance of Flora popping up alive somewhere are decreasing by the second. So she really, really, really needs to find her. And at the moment, Mason thinks, you know what? You're just stalking her away somewhere. You got her hidden and you're waiting for this all to die down, and so you can head on out with her. I can buy that too, that the way that this whole thing's going and the fact that Lee already kidnapped her before, it's not helping her case any.
They kind of settle down, and then, of course, later that night, they get a phone call. Matt gets a phone call from the cops, and a body has been found.
Oh my God.
Turns out, of course, it's Mason. His body has been burned up, and now everyone's looking right at Lee.
Yeah.
There's no way you can't. And also, this is backed up when Matt goes back home with Shelby, and they look at the camera footage from the night, and you can see Mason leaves, and then Lee leaves the house, and she doesn't return for 4 hours. 4 hours. 4 whole hours. And her ex is now... it looks to be burned alive at the stake. So, okay, that those 4 hours, I think you can get all that done in that time period. So Lee is obviously suspect number one here.
Yeah, the obvious direction is everyone's looking at Lee, but also we know like tons of horror movies have done this, right? The misdirection. The obvious person is that person who just had a fight with, they just had a fight, they just had a blow up in public with other people around. Like looks like there's circumstantial evidence that like puts them in the same place, but we don't know for sure what she did. If she did it, she's putting on a very good acting job. Now, Greg, obviously Matt and Shelby have this evidence that kind of puts Lee in a bad light. It looks like she's done this, but they decide not to go to the cops immediately. Were you surprised on this decision on their part?
No, because it's Matt's sister, so they're probably going to try to look out for her prior to getting all the evidence. They want to, Matt's just thinking, maybe we're going too fast into this, but Shelby's like, she's a murderer, let's get her out of this house. And then, of course, Lee overhears the entire thing, and everyone's getting into an argument. And before they can even point fingers and start calling 911, the door creaks open, and in comes Cricket Marlowe.
What an entrance.
After what happened, you should keep the door locked. I was called. Help you find your little girl.
Now, Cricket is, of course, played by the fabulous Leslie Jordan, who's been in 3 seasons of AHS, most recently in 1984, which we loved. Great performance here, over the top, as someone that can connect and talk with the spirits. Really, really, really fun. He's more or less the Billy Dean Howard of this season, someone that can, speak with the spirits in the afterlife. And he says he's very like obscure about how he heard about the whole thing, but basically he was called by someone or something because he realized that they were in search of Flora, of their daughter, of Lee's daughter. So some power brought him there, and he's just there to help. But this entire sequence of when they first meet him and is just really, really, really good.
And this makes me think of what's coming in the future with American Horror Story, where American Horror Stories, where each story is one episode dedicated to an individual story, where now, hey, we could have a Cricket Marlowe episode in New Orleans where he's talking about this Agent Greenfield and looking for this lost kid. The ideas are endless here where they could do with this character.
The mystery to this abduction is only going to be untangled by a man who knows the comings and goings of the other side.
Or, Greg, how about a team up? How about we get an American Horror Stories with Cricket and Billy Dean Howard, and they team up and they take down the most horrific spirit ever in a haunted house down in New Orleans. I mean, anything in New Orleans, I'm watching.
Those accents from both of them, from both actors, that will be something. Now, Cricket thinks Flora is not dead, and she's hanging out with her girlfriend Priscilla, the spirit of the Roanoke colony, which we're going to find out later in this episode what happened to Priscilla. And with that, Shelby's believing him. She believes him. Matt, on the other hand, thinks it's all bull. He just thinks he's, snake oil salesman. He's trying to do whatever he can to, get him on his side before he just pulls out the checkbook. Now, with that said, they go forward in this whole entire thing with Cricket after he just proves to them that, you know what, I'm the real deal here and I can find Flora. So they go ahead with it, and they have, what is this, a seance, I believe, the night of?
Is it Priscilla?
No. It's another.
Now, this is a little freaky part. Obviously, not everyone can see the butcher here, but Cricket is having a conversation with the butcher, and then, like, the candle splits in half. Now, Greg, if you and I were hanging out, and all of a sudden a candle just split in half, or something was broken in the middle of the house, like, that's enough to freak you out. But, like you said, Matt is, like we've seen consistently throughout this season, he doesn't really believe what's going on. He thinks they're just tricks.
Parlor tricks.
He thinks that they're just someone's just trying to, like, get up on them and make some money off them and get them out of the house, all that stuff. So he doesn't really believe it. I mean, he thinks that someone could be outside with a BB gun. That's a funny little note there, that he thinks like someone's like in on the prank with him and just trying to sell them on this service.
Also, let's not forget that this is a reenactment, so it gets super meta when you see that candle split in half. And if I want to take it out and just go, okay, wait a minute, I know already that it's fake because this is a TV show, it's a fictional show, and obviously they just use a practical effect to split that candle in half. So you're already siding with Matt here. With that said, you can go into the fact that they do say it out loud. So anything they say to the cameras through their reenactment, and then they show it on screen in the reenactment, means it happened. But if you see things, people have pointed this out in the comment section too, to keep in mind that if they show you things in the reenactment that they don't technically say, they don't specifically say it to the audience through the actual characters who are playing these people, like Lee, Shelby, and Matt, then you got to take a grain of salt here and think that maybe it's just the producers, Cheyenne Jackson, who may have put a little sauce on this.
That's a great point, Greg, because there is a little bit of over-dramatization and exaggeration in order to make this an entertaining show to watch, right, for viewers.
Yes, of course. So, and we're getting that just in general with the whole show, American Horror Story. So I like this story and this plot. I just love it. And with that said, I can see this whole thing with Cricket being nothing more than a ruse. And then Matt brings it up when all the windows break. He thinks it was just a BB gun. It had to be.
But then they hear Cricket say Croatoan, that word again.
Yes.
And it's kind of like, what? Like, something has to be going on if this word is the safe word to kind of protect people when they're being attacked. I love how the switch flips here, though, and then all of a sudden Cricket goes into salesman mode, and he's just trying to hustle. He's like, yep, it's going to be $25K to find Flora. I can do it. Takes Visa, MasterCard, Discover, all that kind of stuff. So he's basically teasing them. I mean, a very good job to kind of get someone hooked, better than any car salesman ever. He just basically shows them exactly what they're dealing with, and like he says, I can help you guys, but it's going to cost some money.
They kick him out of the house, of course, right after that. But sure enough, the next day, Lee, she decides to head over to him. She pays him. I think she gives him the $25K or something close to that.
Yeah.
She immediately gives him cash and says, let's go look for Flora. And so they head back out into the woods that night.
Yeah, and the key here is, why did she go back and follow up with Cricket, right? But as we see from that initial meeting, he leaves the room and he whispers into Lee's ear.
Yeah.
He says specifically, Emily says hello. She wonders why you quit looking for her years ago. And this provides some context and backstory into Lee that we had no idea was going on. She did have a previous daughter, Emily, when she was 17 years old. And when Emily was 4 years old, I think she went shopping and kind of left her in the car and came back, and she was abducted. Something obviously that's been haunting her for years and years. But Cricket bringing that up in that moment really just connected with Lee and motivated her to come back the next day and get answers. How does Cricket even know about Emily? He must have this sense.
I feel like of all things, though, all the things that just saw happen, transpire at the house with all the magic and supernatural experiences they've had here, just because he says something about her daughter, he can find that info out some way. I'm almost certain of it. He could have found that info and slipped that to her. But whatever, it gets the ball rolling and they move on to the next step.
The only way to save your baby is to find out everything we can about the enemy.
So in their conversation, Cricket provides Lee with some backstory on the Roanoke colony. Now, to Lee, this isn't a surprise. Clearly, she's heard of the Roanoke colony, and she even says everyone in North Carolina knows about this. But she says that the monument for the Roanoke colony, aka the Lost Colony, is about an hour away from where the house is now. So she's like, why are we talking about this? This isn't relevant. But Greg, in my book, even if you're an hour away from the monument, that's like way too close to be living.
No, if you can get there on a train, that's my cutoff. If a ghost can get on a train and head over and kill my ass, then no, that's too close to a haunted house for me. Not happening.
Yeah, I'm with you on this. Now, this conversation does provide some exposition, some context into like what happened to the butcher, the person that has been haunting this land, and that we've seen brief moments of, but we didn't really get her story. So now Cricket explains exactly what went down years ago.
Thomas and White, who was married to, of course, John White at the time. John White heads out back to England. He does not return anytime soon. Everyone's still waiting on him, like, Krusty is coming, Krusty is coming.
Krusty is coming, Krusty is coming, Krusty's coming.
No one's showing up here, and Thomason wants to keep everyone on the land, even though everyone's starving at this point, and they're at their breaking point. So sure enough, they come up with a plan here to get her out of the town, and they banish her off.
Were you surprised like how harsh this treatment was of her? I mean, I understand everyone's like their lives are at stake, but like they put her in a scold's bridle, one of those contraptions that basically was used back for punishment and for things like this, a form of like public embarrassment / torture. And then they just kind of leave her to die in the woods. I mean, a little excessive in my book.
Well, yeah, and also you think at this time period, too, when it comes to, like, witches, I can see it happening, but just leaving her out there in the woods, I thought they would just, like, make it quick and just kill her and move on, but they gave her an out here, and the witch, Scathatch, takes advantage of this.
So Thomason left for dead in the middle of the woods. It sounds like a wild boar is approaching, gonna eat her alive. But then a mysterious figure, Scathatch, played by Lady Gaga, the witch, the OG Coven witch, if you're wondering, kills the boar and wants to feed the heart to Thomason in exchange, basically for you're selling your soul to the devil almost kind of thing, and basically you have protection and you give everything to this person, and she gets eternal life, I think, from it.
It seems that way. Well, the magic's working. She's out of that vice, and she heads straight back to the colony now as the new and improved butcher, and takes back...
Watch out, y'all. Watch out, y'all.
And she takes back her colony by the best manner she could think of, which is start going for the leaders in charge and chopping some heads off.
I've been purified by my torment in the wilderness.
Talk about some payback, Greg. I mean, incredible return back to camp. One thing to note here, remember, her son, Thomason's own son, played by Wes Bentley, also betrayed her and like turned his back on her and left her in the woods. Let's not forget about that. She doesn't kill him, but she basically puts herself back in charge and says, okay, guys, I'm back and y'all screwed up. We also learn here, though, Cricket explains that the colony actually moved from where Lee thought it was, an hour away, and its origination is right where the house is on these lands. So this is why the Millers and Lee and everyone that comes here are completely screwed.
Turns out this is one of the many hellscapes we have in the American Horror Story franchise. This is a hotel, murder house, and now we have the Roanoke land. This Roanoke house is on top of some cursed property.
Don't forget about Camp Redwood as well. That's also some cursed property.
Of course. Yep.
Whole lot
Lady in White.
Whole lot of cursed property all across American Horror Story.
Now back with the gang, Cricket has been paid, so he's taken Lee, Shelby, and Matt out into the woods so they can strike a deal, I guess, with the butcher. Sure. It looks like it's working.
Good luck.
It's working. The butcher actually talks to them. They sit down. They have a negotiation here. I like where they're going. And the deal they come up with is that if they find Flora, if they are able to, get Priscilla to somehow bring Flora back to them, they will leave. In fact, they're gonna burn down the house. And Shelby's like, wait a minute, I wasn't a part of this kind of deal here. For some reason now Shelby decides she wants to stay. Out of everything that's happening here, Shelby's like, no, I want to stay now. She bolted the first episode, but she's had a full-on turn where she's just like, okay, let's keep the land. We're gonna fight it no matter what. Or ghosts, screw them. We're gonna keep this place. I don't know.
And what a weird decision to make. I mean, knowing that your niece is missing, possibly dead, and you can maybe get her back. Like, at this point, hey, Shelby, just give up the house. Who cares? Like, let's get your little niece, let's get Flora back safe and sound. Let's leave this place. It's only brought you horrible, traumatic experiences. And let's get to safety. But she's kind of shocked. And now, meanwhile, all this is going down. Everyone looks around and it's like, where's Matt?
Matt's gone.
We've seen this in countless horror movies. We've seen this in countless movies. Like, you look around and one person's missing and you're like, oh crap, Matt's basically dead.
I certainly have no memory of what Shelby said she saw when she found me.
Matt!
Shelby goes looking for him, and she stumbles upon Matt having sex with Scathatch.
This is the beginning of the Matt scream. So how many times says you should drink as a drinking game? Every time Shelby screams Matt out in the woods somewhere. This is the beginning of it, and it's only going to keep going for each episode. I love it.
Matt! Matt!
Matt.
Matt!
Matt?
Matt!
Matt?
Scathatch, has some needs that we find out later on. And Matt is basically the target of those. So, Shelby's obviously horrified and in shock. And then she runs away from all this. Just as she comes back to the house, the cops are pulling up. And the cops arrest Lee for the murder of Mason.
Shelby rats everyone out here. She's tired. She doesn't want to burn up this house for whatever reason, and she saw Matt sleeping with a witch. She's had enough at this point, and so she calls the police. Lee is now headed downtown or wherever the hell she's going, to whatever the police station is, and now Matt and her have to figure out what the hell's going on with this house.
But he also has no recollection of what just happened in the woods with Scathatch. It was not memorable in his eyes. He basically was in a he had a blacked out in a trance and had no control over it. So he literally is looking at her and just pleading with her that he has no idea what just happened, and it's just basically something that happened that she has to kind of deal with now and just kind of learn to let it go. So she's in a really horrible situation herself.
Now, one creepy thing to take of note here is that while Matt is with the witch, we have two of the Polks just chilling, hanging out there. It looks like they may be having a show of their own while they're watching this, but it felt a lot like Blair Witch. Because all you see is the back of their heads real quick, and that's it. And the camera cuts away. It's great.
It's super funny because you're like, if it wasn't enough to see your husband having sex with a witch, it was like, oh, and there's these two other people. They're putting on a show for these two other people that are just masturbating in front of them. Okay, it's very American Horror Story just to throw that in there.
I love it. Again, that's why I like the script too, because they made sure they could have just had Scathatch and Matt out in the woods and that's it. But no, they had to also add the Polks in that scene. So whoever did this, you deserve a raise.
Yeah, and it definitely, once you watch this, you're like, okay, there's going to be a payoff at the end here where we're going to get more context into who these people are and what they're doing. And obviously they are more used to or they're more involved with the colony that's been there, right? It's kind of like this isn't a shock to them. They're literally having enjoyment based on what they're seeing.
I saw you with her, screwing her up against this tree while those hillbillies watched. It was disgusting.
Shelby, I don't know what you're talking about.
Now, this is chapter 4, and we already have the situation where Matt, his mind has been wiped. He has no idea what happened here in the woods or anything that happened with the witch, at least. Now, with that said, Shelby, she wants some time alone just to, cool off and take a shower. Unfortunately, the house has other things in mind at this point, as they're now just in full-on haunt mode. So we get the piggy man right then and there chasing her around with a knife.
Now, let's keep in mind, Shelby was convinced what she saw in the woods was real, whereas Matt's like, oh, hey, she's totally lost it. It's not me that's lost it, but she's thinking the exact opposite of him. Now when she sees the piggy man attack her in the shower, all bets are off, right? She's completely freaked out, runs downstairs. Yeah. Matt comes to her to save her. They're both in trouble because Piggy Man is not easy to kill. They run back downstairs, and they are saved, thankfully, by Dr. Elias Cunningham, who is alive and has been hiding out this whole time.
Yeah, it's a Shining moment. He takes that axe right to the Piggy Man, so it's a little reference to The Shining there. But also, he says the words Croatoan, lights flicker, and the Piggy Man's gone. Now at this point, I you know what? I'm buying it. I'm believing this whole thing.
Yeah.
I'm not looking past any of this anymore, and it's time to go. You know what? I'm like, Flora, God bless you. We will try to find you, but we're going to head on out. I'm going to get some gasoline, start pouring it on the property, and just light it off. Let's go. Let's leave.
I'm with you.
It's time.
With you. Now, at this point, to me, it seems like they should be listening to every word that Elias says to them because, as we find out, he's been the house's guardian. He's been studying this place for so long. He's literally been on the premises. He's seen with his own eyes everything that's going on. He can confirm all of their wildest fears that they have from their experience that they've seen, right? You know, from watching all the videos that he did, the research that we know he's doing for the book, he knows exactly what's going down here. And in just the the example of him screaming Croatoan at Piggy Man, he knows it's only a temporary fix. That basically he's going to come back. It just banishes him for a little bit, but basically you guys need to follow everything he says in order to survive this.
He is the character who dumps all the exposition before they
Yes.
die in every horror film. Typically, it's usually every once in a while, it's always a character of color. We call him the magical Negro sometimes in some stories where they just show up, dole out a bunch of exposition, and right before they can say, I'm like 2 weeks away from retirement, clack, they're killed.
Yep.
So keep that in mind for Elias Cunningham here.
Yeah, so speaking of that exposition, he does run us through the history of the Roanoke house that we're standing on. And basically, the pattern emerges here pretty quickly, that like every decade when someone moves into the house and then they basically are tormented, the place is haunted, and they're killed. And their whereabouts are completely, they're never found. No one knows where they went. They completely disappear. And this happens, throughout the 50s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, all the way up to now current day where we are in American Horror Stories. So they run it through kind of a quick little history lesson for Shelby and Matt. We find out in 1973, the Chen family moved in from Taiwan, and they wanted to live this very all-American life and assimilate into the country. And they even have, I like the touch. They even had like the frozen dinners, Greg, that they kind of just heated up, and they're watching the Partridge. Yeah, they're watching the Partridge Family on the TV, like trying to just and even they're trying to speak only English inside the house, like very, very 1970s, trying to become fully immersed in the American culture. But the poor family, tormented from the minute they get there.
Emmy, wait!
Yes, we see the pigs first. Then they start reaching out to them, scaring them, pushing people down the stairs, and it just builds up. And it mirrors everything that's happening to Shelby and Matt. So even with that in mind, Matt and Shelby should go, okay, wait, we should get the hell out of here. This sounds exactly like what's happening to us now, where it's just building up. Small things. First it was Shelby getting her head pushed under the water, which is actually kind of a big thing at this point. She should have left the first night. But it seems like they're building, and Elias lets us know that this is because of the blood moon.
That's right. The blood moon is part of the lunar cycle where all these deaths occur, basically. So if you're hanging out at the Roanoke house during this time, that's when you want to leave and come back maybe the following week and then start your vacation then. Don't start it on the actual blood moon or the lunar cycle, called as they call it the dying grass moon, where it was 6 days of blood according to the locals and natives in the area. So we go back in time. In 1952, 3 hunters blowed off their own heads with shotguns. Probably went crazy, or they were forced to do this. We mentioned the Chen family in the 70s. 1989. We also know about the Jane sisters who tortured and murdered their patients, those nurses that we saw. Obviously, they get
gnarly.
Yeah, they get interrupted while they're trying to murder all these people, and the butcher, basically, the colony pops up and wants to sacrifice them. They need to see blood on the dirt. So this was one of the most gruesome deaths, Greg. One of the sisters gets her arms completely ripped out of their sockets. I mean,
ripped off.
Yeah.
She gets them ripped off, and then the other one gets decapitated. Again, one of the best things about this season is like how they use the Roanoke colony to kill everyone, because they're all brutal, and I wish there were more of them. There wasn't enough. They needed more gruesome Hellraiser deaths in this season, but this will do.
That was I'm with you. That's a pretty creative death, and it goes to show you just how horrifying the colony is. Because they're doing this to like a serial killers, like 2 serial killers, people that are like the sisters were murdering their patients. They're not free of sin, but the colony themselves are just like on another level of this. We also learned, Greg, about the person that completed the construction of the house in 1792. It is Edward Philippe Mott, of course, that ties us in with Freak Show, Dandy Mott, and Gloria Mott.
Dandy.
Let's just say that the bloodline is a little bit crazy, mad. It's out there. They're pretty sick and twisted. But a nice little tie-in with the larger AHS universe here.
The house was completed in 1792 by Edward Philippe Mott, who was the first to disappear.
And now this is when the episode gets really crazy, because Elias says he can help them find Flora.
Yeah.
They head outside. Sure enough, they come upon a group of people, doing the whole like ring around the rosy. It's creepy as hell. And they find, sure enough, Flora there. She's blindfolded. They're playing with her. The nurses are there. Just basically the dead souls, the souls that are left on the land, just like Murder House and Hotel as well, where they're just there forever. And now they're playing with Flora, and they scream out to her. Nothing really happens just yet, as Elias is trying to come up with a plan to help. But things go haywire as this horn goes off, and sure enough, Elias, his time is done. The time is over for him as he tries to help out. Yet Matt and Shelby, they're into the trance again of the witch.
One more little note, Greg, is that during this whole time, Shelby actually stumbles upon those 3 hunters that we mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
So apparently during this lunar cycle, all the spirits in the area who are either the colony or people that were murdered here, they kind of pop up and roam the area just to add more horror elements to the whole vibe here. So at this point, Shelby has to be convinced that, this is for real and we need to get the hell out.
Crow and Joan! Crow and Joan!
That's not gonna work.
So she tries Croatoan on everyone. Unfortunately, under the lunar cycle, it does not work. Elias lets her know that right before he takes some arrows. And we think at this point he's dead. I like how Shelby tries to help him, and she's like trying to drag him off, but then Matt's like, no, it's too late. It's over for him. And they run off without him. After all of that work and help, he's just left there to die. All right.
Poor guy. I mean, that's a handful. That's a bunch of arrows to take to the chest and try to survive.
This is true.
Poor guy. I mean, he helped out a ton, but like he was, like you said, he dropped all this knowledge on them, and he was immediately killed, or so we think. And basically now they're just left with Cricket, the only person that they can turn to for any type of help. Who, his story aligns with a lot of the stories that they're hearing from Elias and what they've learned from the videotapes and all that kind of stuff. So there's some overlap here where it's like, okay, well, I guess all we have left now is Cricket to help us get in touch with Flora and get her back.
Now, this is where we get another exposition bomb dropped by Cricket, where he tells them a little bit of the story of the witch, and he talked to her the night before. She had a knife to his throat, but he says, you know what? You just need some sex. That's what you're missing right now in your life, and I got the guy just for you. So he offered up Matt. Shelby's pissed, but there's nothing they can do now, and we already saw prior night before that Matt, he accepted this at some point. So here we go.
This is hysterical. It turns into an erotic thriller here when, everyone stop killing each other. Just have some sex. That's going to solve all of our problems, guys.
You just haven't been laid in a long time. I see the issue here. All good.
It's been centuries. Poor Scathatch. It's been centuries. Now we also get further confirmation that the colony moved from where everyone thinks it might have been to this house. This is the actual site of where the lost colony was basically performing human sacrifice. And they basically continue to do this in order to reap the benefits of the land and the riches and the good crops, all that kind of stuff. So Thomason was basically running a whole sacrificial thing with rituals where she would kill all of the poor children, Priscilla included, amongst many others, and basically, some midsummer vibes right here, where you're just like killing people and letting them die, so that you continue to have a bountiful, riches here.
She's running her apocalypto vibe here. She's got it going, and unfortunately, her son. They decide, you know what? That's enough of this. Enough blood sacrifice to the devil or whoever, or the witch in this case. They want it to be stopped. Unfortunately, she has other plans, as we learn a little bit later on in the episode.
Cast out, but traitorous, petulant babes!
They are all children in need of discipline.
One thing that stood out to me when watching all these reenactments is how good Kathy Bates is in all of these sequences. Like, she's like by far head and shoulders above every other actor in these sequences. I thoroughly enjoy when Kathy Bates can just dive into a character and just completely you're like, oh my god, that is the butcher.
Yeah. You want everyone else to stop talking because the accents are terrible, but when it comes to Kathy Bates, she's great. It's amazing. She is set to go from day one. She just takes this role and just goes with it, and I'm all for it. I want her own story. I don't care. She's just so good.
So as you mentioned, Greg, Ambrose, her son, played by Wes Bentley, wants her to just stop all this blood magic, all this human sacrifice, but Thomason's like, hell no, I'm going to dive in deeper and go even further into this dark path that I'm on. And she basically decides, after kind of talking with the witch, and Scathatch instructs her, basically, you got to kill more, you got to sacrifice everyone. They're not on the same page as you. And they have a nice little feast. It reminded me kind of AHS Apocalypse, when they have the bobbing for apples scene.
Yep.
Where just everyone is wiped out, like one little festive get together. Everyone just wiped out like that.
Don't take food from Kathy Bates in American Horror Story. Just don't. When she passes out food to everyone, do not take it at all.
Great point. Didn't she try to cook something in Coven too, where she was trying to feed the witches, or I don't know, maybe. Just that's a good point, Greg. Do not take food from Kathy Bates. That's a great point. And then after she kills everybody, she basically sacrifices herself to Scathatch. So she gives her own life, and basically Scathatch slits her throat. The blood sacrifice to the ancient gods have been completed, and the butcher and her colony completely vanish physically from the form there, but they are forever attached to this land, and will just haunt anyone that comes by here. So don't vacation. If you're on Airbnb and you see something that looks like the Roanoke house in North Carolina, do not book it, please.
Now remember, they're just gonna haunt you, just a little haunting. As long as you're not under the dying grass moon. As long as you're not under that, then you're fine. But if you got that blood moon for those 6 days, then you're screwed. You don't want to be on that property. But if not, then they'll just haunt you. You're fine. If you're okay with that kind of stuff, you're okay then. Then just do a Ghost Adventurers episode or something.
Our gift to you is Aaron.
And then from there, Cricket's phone goes off. Uber's calling. He's got an Uber waiting for him, apparently, and he heads out. And this is where he says he needs to get more materials. He got to get all his stuff together so he can really complete this whole thing and find Flora. This is the I'll be right back moment for Cricket, sadly.
I'll be right back.
Exactly, Greg. I love how there's a few moments in this episode, or with the character of Cricket, where it kind of just breaks the tension of everything that's going on. His phone is buzzing, Uber's here, Or he says, I'd murder for a Coke Zero. There's a few moments where you just have to stop and just laugh and just how ridiculous and over the top he is.
Yeah.
And how much fun Leslie is having with this role. Because it's a very dark show, a lot of gruesome stuff going on, but like it just kind of like lifts it up the spirits a little bit more when you're watching it.
Tell me, young man, have you ever heard the term gay for pay?
Just like that. That's a perfect example of what I was talking about. Now, he can't get to his destination because the Uber drive is actually interrupted by Flora, who literally runs in front of the car.
Yeah.
This whole time I'm screaming at the TV, Greg. I'm like, Flora, I know you don't want to jump in a car with strangers, but there's spirits chasing you in a creepy forest. Just jump in front of the car and get the hell to safety.
We don't even know what dimension Flora's in her own mind at this point. She's been in Babes in Toyland version of Roanoke Colony.
Yeah.
So who knows what the hell she's gone through at this point. But with that said, Cricket runs out to go get her, and the Uber driver's like, oh, I guess I'll just stay here. Oh, well.
So another night at the Roanoke house, and tonight's a special night for Matt. He has to basically pay off what Cricket signed him up for. He's owed to Scathatch. It's been quite some time, and she wants to have some sex. So she basically it calls him, is seducing him, kind of like a vampire. And he has no choice in the matter. He has to go down to her sex dungeon, and nice little candles everywhere, setting the mood. But he's instantly attracted to her and in her spell. And now we get some backstory on what she went through and who she is. He basically, I think he explains it that he didn't even talk to her. He just threw out by having sex with her. He just basically he sees what she's been through. So we find out that she was a stowaway headed to North America from way back, and she's believed in the old magic of that time, and basically was almost burned at the stake for being a witch.
Yeah, they think all of the problems they have on that land are because of her, so they want to kill her, and somehow, some way, she managed to avoid that and take everyone out there. And she became this new entity on the land from this point going forward, where she is the part old gods and the new land, and now she is she's running over the entire Roanoke colony. Now, one thing to keep of note here is that Matt says he would have joined her, Ryan. Let's keep that in mind. This is something that's going to come back around later, and it's not going to end well. But Matt says right there that, you know what, I would have joined her. And then the camera, and then they just cut. That scene just cuts immediately to the next thing happening. Like, oh, okay. Well, that was weird.
You're like, what?
What did he just say?
Yeah, exactly. But then you're thinking, is this Matt? Is Matt completely clear? Is that his own thoughts? Or was he so convinced by Scathatch's powers and so under the spell that he's kind of cloudy, is a clouded vision of what he truly wants? Maybe what she did to him and the spell she put him under kind of changes him forever. He now is drawn to her forever, or maybe it is actually real and he had an intimate connection with this being and felt kind of the pain that she went through, and now he kind of understands her on a deeper level. He even says it, that he's never been this intimate and this deep with someone. Even in the real world, right? That he kind of understands her on a whole different level than anyone before.
Yeah, remember, keep in mind, this was Andre Holland's Matt that said this, not Cuba Gooding's. So this is going to come back around. So the colony shows up at the front door with Flora. Everyone's outside, and they're about to sacrifice Flora before Priscilla is able to help her out, pushes her away, and they run back in the house. Unfortunately, Flora wasn't the only one the Roanoke colony brought back with them. Poor Cricket.
Poor Cricket, Greg. This is horrible. They murder Cricket in probably, actually, we said that earlier in the episode, or we saw that the Jane sisters got some pretty gruesome kill, but Cricket really gets it bad. Cricket gets it bad. Gets disemboweled in front of Matt and Shelby, who are looking down outside the window like, uh-oh. And this basically is just a warning. It's just a warning. Butcher's like, guess what? You guys are next. You guys haven't followed up on your deal. You have to leave the land, or we're going to murder every single one of you guys.
Her message was clear.
Oh, Jesus wept. That scene. I loved it. It's the gore here is amazing, which is one of the things I loved about this season. It's just how great they were with their practical effects this time around when it came to the Roanoke colony. I wanted more of it. I was like, please just give us more Roanoke colony deaths here or sacrifices for every episode.
Yeah, it was awesome. Well, guys, that'll do it for this week. Those are episodes 3 and 4 for you. Of course, we'll be back next week for episodes 5 of 6 of Roanoke, but hit us up in the comments. We'd love to hear from you guys. Let us know what you thought of these 2 episodes, and we will see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone.